Her true story from California. My daughter yelled, "Get out, or I'll call the cops." So I did, and called the Realtor instead. By sunset, I had 3 offers and 86 missed calls. She screamed, "Get out, or I'll call the cops." And I did. I walked out the back door, barefoot, carrying nothing but my breath. And by sunset, I had 3 offers and 86 missed calls. It wasn't even noon yet. The light outside had that cruel kind of beauty, clear, clean, like a lie told with a straight face. My daisy beds shimmered in it, and the rosemary bush I'd trimmed just yesterday still smelled of summer. But in the doorway behind me stood my daughter, her phone held tight like a weapon. Her eyes didn't blink, her voice didn't tremble. And I didn't argue. Not this time. I walked. Down the back steps I had painted with Paul the year we bought this house. Across the patio I once swept barefoot at dusk. I stepped into the garden I planted with my own hands, and I did not look back. The gate clicked behind me. Then, and only then, I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out the card. Jessica Tran, Realtor. I'd met her once at the grocery store. Her mother used to borrow cookbooks from me at the library. She'd smiled like a girl who still believed in people. I called. "Hi, this is Evelyn Collins. I need to sell a house. Quickly. Privately. Today, if you can." She didn't ask why. She just said, "I'm on my way." By 2 p.m., she was standing outside, clipboard in hand, already making notes. I didn't invite her in. I didn't go inside myself. I stood by the sidewalk like a neighbor, like a stranger, like someone whose name had been scratched off a mailbox. I told her, "No open houses, no signs, just the truth. It's a good home. It's had a good life." She looked at me then, not with pity, thank God, but with recognition. "I'll handle everything," she said. Discreet. Fast. Serious buyers only. By 4 p.m., I had signed the listing papers from the motel. Not my name as Mom, just Evelyn Collins, title holder, owner, woman who remembers everything. And by sunset, her phone buzzed. 3 offers, she said, voice steady but excited. All at or above asking. That night, I sat on a bed that wasn't mine, in a room that smelled of other people's choices, and watched the sun set through motel blinds. My phone lit up. Once. Then again and again, until it looked like it was on fire. 86 calls. All from her. Not one with the words, "I'm sorry." Not one with, "Come home." I didn't answer. I poured tea into a paper cup and stared at the steam. This isn't revenge. This isn't rage. This is a woman finally remembering the weight of her own name. And if you too have stood in a room you paid for, only to be told to leave it like a thief, then maybe this story is yours too. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, because here we don't raise our voices, we raise the truth. It was the spring of 1983 when Paul and I first stepped into the house on Bloomridge Avenue. The roof sagged in the back. The front gate was held shut with a string, but the porch creaked with a kind of honesty. Paul ran his hand over the banister like he was touching the edge of a dream. "It's got good bones," he said. "Like us?" I asked. He smiled, that lopsided smile he wore when he was scared but pretending not to be. "Exactly like us." We'd been married 16 years. No Paris honeymoon, no white picket fence. Just second jobs, reused coffee filters, and a quiet agreement to keep going, no matter how thin things got. When we signed those papers, it wasn't just a house we were buying. It was permission to finally exhale. I remember the first night in that house. No furniture yet. Just 2 mattresses on the floor and a radio playing soft country music between the static. Lauren, 6 years old and already full of questions, had fallen asleep with her cheek on Paul's chest. He whispered, "She thinks this is an adventure." I whispered back, "It is." We painted the living room walls ourselves. Paul on the ladder, me with a roller and a bucket of eggshell white. Lauren danced barefoot on the drop cloth, green splotches on her knees. "Careful, baby," Paul said, "or Mama's going to paint you into the wall." We planted the garden crooked and late. Nothing grew right the first year except weeds. Still, I watered it like it mattered. That's what you do with broken things you love. There were birthdays with homemade cake, rainy days with leaks in the roof and towels lining the hallway. We had Thanksgiving dinners with folding chairs and mismatched plates, and we made it feel like plenty. That house saw our best and worst days, and never once asked us to be anything but exactly who we were. When Paul got laid off in '92, we ate oatmeal for dinner 3 nights a week. When he found work again, fixing HVAC units, we celebrated with a rotisserie chicken and orange soda. Lauren made a paper crown for him that read, "Super Dad." I still have it. Somewhere. Then came 2006. Cancer doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door open. It turns every hallway into a battlefield. We moved our bed downstairs when Paul couldn't handle the steps anymore. I became his nurse without thinking twice. Fed him soup, held his hand, rubbed his back through nights that felt endless. He died in that house. The morning light had just come in through the blinds. The kettle had just started to whistle. And then it was quiet. I stayed another 5 years. Sometimes I swore I could hear him humming from the next room. Other times, the house felt like a memory I wasn't ready to wake up from. But silence, even the gentle kind, eventually becomes too loud to bear. In 2011, Lauren suggested I move in with her and Eric. "It'll be better for both of us," she said. "You won't be alone anymore." What she didn't say, what I didn't ask, was whether I'd still be allowed to be me. I packed my life into boxes. The wedding album, Paul's toolbox, my teacups. I locked the front door, pressed my palm to the wood, and told myself, it's just a new chapter. But I left more than furniture behind. I left the only place that ever truly knew me. At first, it felt like kindness. Lauren had cleared a space in their guest room, white curtains, fresh linens, a little note on the dresser. "Welcome home, Mum." Eric carried in my boxes, careful not to scuff the floor. I remember thinking, maybe this will work. Maybe this is what family means now. She brought me tea that first night, green, with lemon, the way I liked it. "You just rest," she said. "We've got everything handled." For a while I believed her. I unpacked quietly, placing Paul's photo on the nightstand, folding my clothes into drawers that didn't quite smell like mine. I lined up my books on the small shelf Eric helped install. The room felt borrowed, but not unfriendly. Yet, it started small. My knitting basket vanished from the living room. When I asked, Lauren waved a hand. It didn't go with the decor. My old kitchen clock was replaced by a sleek digital one. "You couldn't read the hands clearly anymore, right?" The changes kept coming. No more garlic. The smell lingers. No more tea after 8. It keeps us up. Could I keep the television volume lower? Could I stop watching old black and white films because they made the space feel dated? I said yes. To everything. I told myself it was nothing. Just compromise. Just shared space. But one morning, I found my garden pots removed from the patio. "It looks cluttered," Lauren said, with that voice she used when she was pretending to smile. "They're just herbs," I replied, soft. "We're going for minimalism," she said, walking away. The pots were lined up near the trash cans. I should have said something, should have pushed back. But all I did was bring the mint inside and plant it in a coffee mug. My world shrank inch by inch. I no longer played music aloud. I only left my room when invited. I cooked, yes, but only what she approved. No guests, no loud phone calls, no lingering in shared spaces. Once, when I tried to bake, she raised an eyebrow and said, "Just don't leave a mess, okay?" I had baked that exact shortbread for her 10th birthday. She'd called them cloud cookies. Now I was a caution. The days folded into each other. I washed their laundry, scrubbed the grout with a toothbrush, remembered not to walk too loudly after 10. One afternoon, I stood at the sink, rinsing a glass, when I heard her on the phone in the next room. "No, she just kind of hangs around. I mean, it's nice, but, she's always there. I think it's wearing on Eric." Then laughter. She called me helpful, but she didn't mean it as kindness. She meant it the way you call a stray dog loyal, because it hasn't bitten yet. That night, I sat in the guest room, staring at the wall. No photos, no calendar, just a single nail where a clock used to be. The walls were quiet, but inside me, something had started to shift. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I had begun to remember the weight of the years that came before her rules, the decades that made me who I was, the woman who buried a husband, raised a daughter, built a home, and now was being reduced to a polite inconvenience. I wasn't resentful, not yet, but I was starting to listen. Not to her, to myself. I heard them by accident. It was past midnight. I had come downstairs for warm milk, my slippers soft against the tile, when I heard her voice, low but sharp, cutting through the dark. "She's just always there," Lauren said. "She's your mother," Eric replied, quiet, too quiet. "I know," she sighed, "but she's exhausting, like emotional clutter." I didn't breathe. I didn't move. The milk bottle grew warm in my hand as their words settled like ash around me. Emotional clutter. Not a guest, not a person. Just static. Something tolerated. Never wanted. "She doesn't even do that much," Lauren continued. "She thinks folding our socks is a contribution." I backed away, slowly, quietly, my heart loud in my ears. In the guest room, my room, the only place I was allowed to exist, I sat for hours, the lights off. I didn't cry. There's a kind of silence that's too old for tears. But I remembered. I remembered Lauren, 7 years old, feverish, curled up in my arms, whispering, "Don't leave me." I remembered her first heartbreak, her head in my lap, mascara on my skirt. I remembered doing her laundry through college, sending care packages with cookies and vitamins and notes she never answered. I had been everything once, and now I was too much. That morning, I watered her roses before the heat came in. I cooked oatmeal and scrambled eggs, like always. She didn't thank me, like always. But something inside me had turned. Later that week, she came into the laundry room holding a sleek folder, her voice smooth as lacquer. "Mom," she began, "I need a little favor." I didn't look up from the towels. "What kind?" She sat across from me, crossing her legs like she was at a business meeting. "It's just paperwork. About the house." I folded deliberately. My hands did not shake. "What about the house?" "It'd make everything easier if it were in my name. For refinancing, tax benefits, equity. You'd still live here, of course. Nothing would change." Still live here. In my own house. "I don't think that's necessary," I said, my voice even, quiet. The voice of someone who knows what is theirs. Her smile faltered. "It's just a signature," she said. "You don't even have to go anywhere. Walter could notarize it, if he's still alive." I turned to her then, finally met her eyes. The silence was long, too long. No, she blinked once. No, no, Lauren. That house is still in my name. It's the only thing your father and I built together. I'm not signing it away. Her mouth pressed into a line. She stood up fast. The folder slipped sideways in her grip. She left without a word. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, the bank called. A woman had applied for a mortgage using my property as collateral. Documents claimed she was the owner, claimed she had inherited the home, claimed she had full authority to handle all financial matters on behalf of her elderly mother. My name was still on the deed, but hers was on the lie. I asked for copies. The bank sensed something off and agreed. There it was, Lauren's signature, Lauren's story, her rewrite of my life, without me in it. It wasn't just disrespect, it was theft. That night, I didn't shout, I didn't accuse. I stood in the kitchen, the one I cleaned daily, and said calmly, I spoke to the bank. She didn't flinch. You shouldn't be poking around in things you don't understand, Mum. I understand perfectly, I said. You tried to take what isn't yours. She looked at me, cool and flat. You exist, she said, like wallpaper. That hurt, but I stood my ground. It's my name on the deed. And in her eyes, I saw something change. Panic, maybe, or rage. You think that matters? She said. You think that paper means anything? I didn't answer, because she was wrong. It meant everything. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear, but from clarity. There's a kind of stillness that only comes when the last illusion breaks, when you stop hoping someone will change, or remember, or apologize. And in that stillness, I made a decision. At 3:12 a.m., I rose from bed. No sound, no light, just the quiet breath of the house, my house, and the creak of old wood beneath my feet. I moved like someone rehearsing a memory. The small suitcase had waited at the back of the closet for over a decade. I packed only what mattered. Clean clothes, my old leather wallet, our wedding certificate, Paul's death certificate, the original deed. Tucked behind it was a photograph. Paul in his wedding suit, grinning. Me in the cream dress Mama helped me sew. I folded it gently into cloth, as if it were porcelain. Then I sat at my desk and wrote a note. Not a letter, not an explanation, just a sentence. Lauren, I don't hate you, but I'm done begging for space in a home I paid for with my life. I have nothing left to give. E.M. Collins, I left it beneath the porcelain teapot she never once used. Shoes on, door closed. No sound. The early spring air was cool and honest. The street was still, and the sky was just beginning to think about morning. I didn't look back. Not once. At 9:45 a.m., I rang Walter Brenner's doorbell. He answered in a cardigan and slippers, reading glasses on his forehead. He blinked once, then smiled. You look like hell, he said. But you always did first thing in the morning. I laughed, the first time in weeks. We sat at his kitchen table. I laid out the papers, the deed, the original purchase contract from 1983, the tax records. He leafed through them carefully, pausing only to mutter, She tried to take it from you. She can't, I said. No. He nodded. She can't. I want to sell it. He looked up. Are you sure? I've never been more. He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He just said, I'll draw up the protections. You'll need a realtor. I already have one in mind. At 11:10 a.m., I walked 2 blocks to a small real estate office. Glass door, lavender sign, Jessica Tran Realty. She looked up, surprised. Mrs. Collins? I want it listed this week. No delays, no open houses, private showings only. She blinked, then nodded. I'll handle it personally. That evening, we met outside the house. My house. She walked the perimeter, took photos, made notes. I stayed in the car. When she returned, she handed me a clipboard. The market's hot, she said. You'll get offers if we move fast. But first, she held out a pen. You need to authorize the listing. I took it. My hand didn't tremble. My heart didn't race. I signed with the same steady grace I once used to sew hems and braid a child's hair. That signature was the softest rebellion I'd ever made, and the loudest thing I'd ever said to my daughter. That night, I booked a new hotel room closer to downtown. I slept with the curtains open, letting the city lights remind me I wasn't under anyone's roof. I was under my own sky again. Jessica moved faster than I expected, faster than hope usually allows. At 8:14 a.m. the next morning, the listing went live. 3 photos. Simple, honest description. Charming 3-bedroom Victorian. Mature garden. Ownership since 1983. Quiet neighborhood. Serious inquiries only. By 10 a.m., her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. By noon, she had shown the house virtually to 2 cash buyers from out of town and 1 local couple relocating from San Jose. At 4:07 p.m., she called. 3 offers, all at or above asking, all clean, no contingencies. I asked, do they know someone's living there? They were told the sale is vacant upon closing. She said, you won't have to speak to anyone. I'll handle it. The first offer was from a tech entrepreneur who wanted quiet. The second, from 2 sisters hoping to renovate and flip. The third, from a divorced woman in her 50s named Diane. She had recently received a settlement, and she was looking for somewhere to begin again. I like her, Jessica said. So do I. Her offer wasn't the highest, but it was cleanest, and something in her voice, in the way Jessica said her name, reminded me of me. I chose Diane. Jessica texted me the contract. I opened it on the small table of my downtown motel room, my reading glasses perched low on my nose. I read every word, then signed. At 6:42 p.m., the house was no longer mine, but it wasn't Lauren's either, and that, finally, felt right. I sat in the stillness of that motel room and watched the light spill sideways through the plastic blinds. The walls were beige, the sheets were too thin, but it smelled like no one else's mood. Just air. Just quiet. My phone buzzed. Lauren. I didn't answer. It rang again. Then again. Then 7 more times before I finished brushing my teeth. No voicemails. No texts. She didn't want to explain. She wanted control. I set the phone on silent and placed its screen down on the nightstand. The next morning, at precisely 8:30 a.m., a courier arrived at her door. Inside the envelope, the certified sale documents, signed, notarized, irrevocable. The property now belonged to Diane Westfield, effective immediately. Included, a formal notice of tenancy termination, 7 days to vacate, or the new owner had legal right to pursue eviction. On the envelope, sender, E.M. Collins, not Mom, not Evelyn, just the woman who remembered what was hers. I imagine she stood there for a long time, rereading every page, looking for loopholes. But there were none. Jessica texted me 2 hours later. She called me, panicked, claimed she was the rightful owner. Jessica's reply was firm. All documentation is verified and filed with county records. Miss Collins is the sole legal owner and has executed her rights in full. This conversation is over. Lauren called me again. 8 more times. Left one message. Mom, what are you doing? You can't sell this house. We live here. Are you losing your mind? Call me back, please. This isn't funny. That word again. We. Not you. Not your house. Just we, as if her residency had rewritten history. By dinner, the missed call count had reached 24. I didn't pick up once. Outside, the city moved like it always had, steady, unaware, indifferent. Inside, I sipped the same tea Paul used to make me when it stormed. Calm, minty, mine. Lauren didn't leave a second voicemail. By then she knew. I wasn't bluffing. And I wasn't coming back. It didn't take long for the neighbours to notice. By midweek, the whispers had already started. Cars slowed when passing the house. Lawn sprinklers paused just long enough for someone behind a hedge to mutter, "Is that the daughter getting kicked out?" By Friday, the rumours had rhythm. "She's getting evicted." No, she's squatting. Can you believe it? Her mother sold the house without saying a word. I thought that place was in the family. And the worst one, the one that echoed through shut doors and clinking garden tools. Imagine being thrown out of your mother's house. I imagine she heard them. Lauren stepped outside that morning in sunglasses too large, lipstick too bright, chin held unnaturally high. But the plastic bags under her eyes betrayed the truth. She was unraveling, slowly, visibly. She packed with the kind of hope only desperate people cling to, the hope that someone, anyone, would intervene. That I would show up, heart softened, ready to reverse it all. But no miracle came, just silence, and a moving truck she had to pay for herself. She stood on the porch for a long time, holding her phone like a lifeline. It buzzed with notifications, some spam, some friends pretending they didn't know, but none were from me. I had said what I needed to say, once, and that was enough. Eric didn't help her carry a thing. He stood by the car, arms folded, eyes elsewhere. When she tried to hand him a suitcase, he stepped back. "I'm going to my mother's," he said flatly. Lauren blinked. "Eric?" He didn't wait for her to finish. He just shook his head, climbed into the car, and drove off. She stood on the curb with 2 designer suitcases and a phone that no one answered. That night, around 9 p.m, I heard a buzz at the gate of my new building. I had just made tea, mint and chamomile, and was settling into the kind of quiet you don't know you've missed until it finds you. I checked the monitor. Lauren, no sunglasses, no lipstick, eyes swollen. She buzzed again, then knelt on the sidewalk just beyond the gate, palms pressed together like a child begging for a new bike. "Mum?" she said into the speaker, voice barely holding itself upright. "Please let me in, just for a little while. I have nowhere to go." I stood by the screen and watched, not cruelly, not coldly, but with the eyes of someone who has finally understood the cost of being soft too long. She trembled. I didn't move. "Please," she whispered again. "Please." I walked to the window. She saw me. Her face lit up. Hope, real and raw, the kind that hurts just to witness. I said nothing, just looked at her. And then, with the same calm she once mistook for weakness, I spoke. "Don't ever think you can trick an old woman, especially your mother." Her eyes widened, then fell. She nodded, once. A quiet, final understanding. I stepped back inside, pulled the curtain closed, didn't watch her walk away. I didn't need to. I had already left a long time ago. My new apartment was on the 24th floor. Not luxurious, not grand, but high enough that the noise of the city softened into a hum, and the sky felt closer than it had in years. It had a small balcony. The first thing I did was plant mint, in 3 clay pots, one for Paul, one for peace, one for myself. Some mornings, I'd crush a leaf between my fingers and let the scent drift over my coffee. I'd close my eyes and think, this is what dignity smells like. The furniture was simple, The walls were white. No one asked me to turn down the volume or apologize for boiling garlic. No one sighed when I left a book on the table or sang along with a dusty old Patsy Cline track. It was quiet, not like Lauren's house, not like a room where you're allowed to exist only as long as you stay invisible. This was quiet that made space. One evening, I was setting down a cup of tea when the phone rang. Lauren. I watched it flash. Once, twice, then still. No voicemail. 10 minutes later, the intercom buzzed. I walked to the monitor. She stood there again, coat too thin, hair disheveled, clutching a duffel bag. Her voice came through the speaker. "Mum, please, just let me stay. Just until I figure things out." She shifted from foot to foot. Cold, exposed, burned every bridge thinking she'd never need to cross them again. I stepped out onto the balcony. She looked up. Our eyes met across 24 floors. Her face lit again with that familiar, desperate hope, the kind daughters wear when they're still convinced love means surrender. I didn't speak at first, just looked at her. Then, quietly, I said, "You taught me something I never wanted to learn. That even the people you give your life to can stop seeing you. That sometimes they don't come back." She opened her mouth, but no sound came. "You thought I wouldn't remember who I was. But I did." I turned, went back inside, pulled the curtain closed. She didn't buzz again. That was the last time I saw her in person. Sometimes the phone rings. Sometimes I recognize the number. I let it ring. I sit by my window with tea and sunlight and let the world pass without reaching for what once felt necessary. Because I have nothing left to explain, nothing left to give, and everything still to live. I bought a new kettle, stainless steel, curved handle, a soft whistle that reminds me of Sundays. I placed it on the stove the first morning in my apartment and thought, it begins here. Not a second life, not a reinvention. Just the life I stopped living somewhere along the way. I kept things simple. One chair by the window, 2 mugs. A stack of books I chose for myself, not because someone left them behind or needed a shelf cleared. No apologies tucked into the corners. No footsteps outside my door, reminding me I was a guest in my own history. On Wednesdays, I visit the market. There's a woman there named Alma who sells bread and never asks if I'm alone. She just hands me a warm loaf, says, "This one's got extra sesame," and smiles like that's all a person needs to feel seen. She's right. On Thursdays, I water the balcony mint. It's growing wild now, spilling over the rims like it knows it's finally safe. Some mornings, I hear birds I don't recognize. Some evenings, I let the quiet stretch long and wide, like a body finally allowed to rest. I keep a photograph of Paul by the window. He looks younger than I remember, less tired, more hopeful. I talk to him sometimes, not out loud, just in the way you talk to someone who knew you before you started shrinking to fit someone else's life. And I tell him the truth, that I stayed too long, that I waited too long to reclaim my own breath, but that I made it. There's a bench at the end of the block beneath a jacaranda tree. I sit there in the late afternoon, watching the petals fall like soft confessions. People pass. Some nod. Some smile. A child once handed me a dandelion without saying a word. I didn't make a wish. I just held it until the wind knew what to do. Sometimes I think of Lauren, not with bitterness, with distance. The way you think of an old song you used to sing before you knew what the lyrics really meant. I don't know where she is. I don't know who answers when she calls now. But I know she no longer dials my number, and I no longer wait for it to ring. I used to think silence was punishment. Now I understand. It's a room you build with your own hands, a place where no one tells you what you're worth, a place where you already know. This isn't revenge. This isn't even justice. It's something quieter, stronger. It's peace, made by a woman who remembered she was never a burden, just a story someone else tried to rewrite, and now, finally, written in her own hand.